The Greeks camp on shore at the Bay of Troy and plan their assault on the Trojan city to rescue Helen. But they would not be the last army to fight for this land. In World War I, nearly 250,000 Allied soldiers died here in the Battle of Gallipoli. In 1452 AD, the Ottomans conquered Constantinople up the river. In 332 BC, Alexander the Great brought an army of 20,000 here. Why have men fought on this coast so many times over the centuries? The answer is its unique location. In Homer, Troy is situated on the edge of the Hellespont, what is today known as the Dardanelles, the drainpipe-shaped waterway that separates the Black Sea from the Aegean, and which separates Europe from Asia. The coast has always been dotted with small fishing villages. But just offshore, there have always been the great ships of world commerce. Much of the ancient world's wealth passed through these narrow waters. If Homer's Troy were here, it would be in a powerful spot. A prevailing northeast wind still whips this spot, then as now. It is a wind that helped make Troy a wealthy city.
The winds and the currents frequently were going the wrong way, and the sailors would have had to put in at the port for up to 6 weeks at a time, and Troy, the rulers of Troy, probably would have taxed those ships.
Troy would become a sort of Bronze Age toll booth, and the wealth flowed in. Outside the walls of the citadel are farms and herds of goats and sheep, the sort of quiet pastoral life Homer described in the Iliad. Inside the citadel, the city is regal and magnificent. Trojan court life is centered within the walls of the citadel, where the king, Priam in Homer's Iliad, exacts tolls and taxes from passing trade ships.
At this time, Troy is probably quite the international city. I would think it had almost a cosmopolitan feel. There are a number of foreign objects, imports, found at Troy. Undoubtedly, there are foreign embassies and delegates coming.
Two cities, Mycenae, rich in trade, and Troy, rich by taxing trade. Could this rivalry between Greeks and Trojans be the real reason that spawns a Trojan War?
We certainly know there were wars in the Bronze Age involving all of these parties who were involved in trading networks in the Eastern Aegean, and it's not surprising, given Troy's location, that it was pulled into this network.
In the late Bronze Age, there is only one way to attack a fortified city: head on. And in Homer's story, that is exactly what the Greeks prepare to do. They gather in front of the city gates, but Paris, fearing a bloody battle over his woman, steps forward and offers to settle the score in single combat with any one of the Greeks. The deal? If he wins, Helen stays in Troy. If he loses, she returns to Greece. Menelaus, Helen's husband, thirsting for revenge, rises to the challenge and quickly gets the upper hand. Paris retreats in fear. According to Homer, it is the gods who whisk him from the battlefield, as if he had simply disappeared. His retreat takes him to Helen's bedchamber, where she scolds him for his cowardice. But not too harshly. handsome coward whose romance endangers a civilization? Was there really a Prince Paris of Troy? Is there any evidence he really lived? Tantalizing clues come from the people who lived just west of Troy, the Hittites, among the first in the world to use the written word.
In those Hittite texts, we find reference to a king of Wilusa named Alexandros. Alexandros is another name for Paris, who of course was a prince of Troy. It looks as if there were conflicts in the late Bronze Age around Troy and in association with this king named Alexandros or Paris. Many have interpreted this as an indication of the kinds of wars that are described by Homer in the Iliad.
And the Iliad is just getting started, because the mighty warrior Achilles has rejoined the fight after a close friend is killed by the Trojan prince Hector. Fueled by his rage, Achilles virtually wipes out the Trojan army and drives the remainders back inside the city gates. The Greek siege has come to the very walls of Troy. Homer described those walls in the Iliad.
The great walls and gates and timbered doors we hung, well planed, massive, and bolted tight, will shield the city.
But was there ever a great siege of Troy? Schliemann had found no evidence of it. But Schliemann would not have the last word on Troy. In 1932, Carl Blegen from the University of Cincinnati began a 7-season excavation of the mound at Hisarlik. Blegen was not the huckster that Schliemann was. He excavated with precision and scholarship. But the goal was the same: to find proof of the Trojan War. The 6th level of Troy was the wealthy, pastoral, international city where life was good. But Blegen's team discovered that the 7th level of Troy, the Troy that stood right at the time of Homer's Trojan siege, was a dramatically different place. They find that foreign luxury goods are gone. Signs of wealth have disappeared. Living conditions are cramped. What has happened to the once wealthy and peaceful Troy? Then, a critical clue. They find storage jars, big ones, and lots of them. The residents of Troy seem to be squirreling away their food.
All of the residents, or most of the residents living in the surrounding area, had moved up into the protection of the citadel. Then you would have had difficulty maneuvering through the streets of the city because houses were built very close to each other. There would have been enormous storage vessels that contained large quantities of food so that you didn't have to leave the protection of the citadel very often. And there would have been a kind of climate of fear.
Fear of what? Professor Rose believes that Troy 7 was, in fact, a city under siege, just as described in the Iliad. In Homer, it is the Greeks who are besieging Troy, and the endgame would take place just outside these fortification walls, where Achilles squares off against Hector in mortal one-on-one combat, with the fate of Troy on the line.